Raw is off this week. Filling in today, Tony Messenger, editorial page editor of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Normally on Thursday, I'd be coming on in about half an hour for the board meeting. We will not have a board meeting today. The other board meeting members, John Deal and Jane Duker, are otherwise busy, and McGraw not being around. So we've got some other good programming in the 9 o'clock hour. But right now, we're going to talk to A.J. Bockelman, Executive Director of PROMO, about this lawsuit that was filed in state court in Kansas City yesterday, challenging Missouri's ban on gay marriage. And what's interesting about this lawsuit, A.J., is sort of how it goes about it. It's focused primarily on folks that got married legally in another state, making sure that their marriage is recognized so that their benefits and rights aren't trampled upon. Can you talk about it a little bit?
Sure. It's an incremental approach to try to achieve basic marriage protections for those individuals who have gone to another state, gotten legally married in one of the 17 states now that offer marriage, plus the District of Columbia. And it's an effort to try to basically whittle away at the ban currently in Missouri state Constitution.
So it's an approach, AJ, that is similar to how the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, ruled in the Defense of Marriage Act, in which they said, look, you can't discriminate. People have certain rights. You can't say that married people can have one set of rights and folks that got legally married somewhere else all of a sudden can't have those same basic rights, such as being able to file their taxes jointly, etc.
Correct. What we've seen is that every time we've had issues like this come before the court, it's constantly been proven that separate is not equal, and this is a similar type of situation where whether it was civil unions or domestic partnerships, however things were codified by different states over the various years, we know that essentially it all comes down to marriage, and it's not same-sex marriage, it's not gay marriage. It's marriage. It's the exact same thing that our peers have that we want access to protect our families.
And we're talking about the civil recognition. We're talking about governmental recognition of rights that I have as a married person that somebody who got married in another state might not have. Talk to us a little bit about some of those rights. I mean, we're talking about tax benefits and visiting your spouse in a nursing home, that sort of thing. How many of those rights are being denied Missourians right now?
Well, right now, effectively, it depends upon the number of state and local laws that are impacted. In Missouri, there are over 1,100 laws that are impacted by having that marriage license. That governs everything from right of survivorship, Social Security benefits, down to inheritance, visiting your spouse, whether it's in jail, in the hospital, or in any other type of situation, not having to perjure yourself in a court case, being tried against your spouse, things like that. When the DOMA situation kind of came down from the Windsor decision back in June, it didn't completely throw out all of DOMA. It threw out just a portion of it. And effectively right now we have a multi-state operation going on where you see marriage going forward in some states but not in others. And we look forward to a time when we have marriage completely available across the board throughout the country.
Yesterday, I'm sure you saw a federal judge in Kentucky ruled that state's ban on gay marriage was unconstitutional. Will that decision, do you think, does that bode well for the case in Missouri, or because it's in state court, is it different?
Actually, I think that case is very similar to the case that has been brought by the ACLU here in Missouri, and we would expect to see a similar ruling. I'd also point out in that case that it's a Bush-era appointee who is also approved and supported by McConnell in the state of Kentucky. So it's not necessarily a liberal or activist judge that is upholding these types of decisions.
You know, that's one of the things that I find fascinating about this issue, that I think for people that don't follow it carefully, when they really think about it and they start talking about individual rights, it's ultimately a conservative approach when you're talking about the Constitution, when you're talking about the Bill of Rights, and making sure that I have the same rights that you have, that Kelly has on a lot of these things. that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about extending new rights to different people. We're talking about making sure that all individuals have their individual rights protected, and that's not necessarily a liberal or conservative idea.
Correct. I think one of the best things that happened, while it was frustrating for many of us within the LGBT rights movement, that we didn't see a full sweeping decision back in June by the Supreme Court, one of the very important things that it did was put in place an opportunity to tell the story of gay and lesbian couples in a very different way than we had up until that time. Much of the focus had been on love and commitment style stories. Now, going forward, with this patchwork quilt, we have an opportunity to talk much more about the basic nuts and bolts of marriage, what it means to be married, what those benefits actually entail. For example, since the Obama administration has adopted many of these policies recognizing marriage regardless of where you live, I found that my organization has been putting a lot more time into understanding exactly what those different areas are. I would never have expected to learn anything about ERISA, which governs employment law and pension and benefits, than if it had been for this decision back in June.
You know, you talk about ERISA. It's an interesting mention there, AJ, because it's America's corporations, America's big companies are way ahead of the government on this issue in terms of just recognizing rights for all of their employees. It's an economic development issue for companies. They want to make sure that they're not cutting out an entire group of a segment of the population in terms of going out to get good employees. So they have company policies that recognize the rights of their gay and lesbian employees as well as their straight employees.
Well, you've seen time and time again a lot of the Fortune 500 companies come out in support of marriage, whether it was in New York State or Washington State. I think those are two notable examples where you had a coalition of Fortune 500 companies come out in support of marriage, because it's about attracting and retaining talent. And if you have a top performer and you want to relocate them to another place, they may not be willing to come to a place like Missouri if they feel that they're going to be discriminated against.
Absolutely.
They're not going to have access to benefits, things like that.
Yep. AJ Bockelman with PROMO, thanks for joining us, talking about the lawsuit in Missouri, trying to overturn the state's ban on same-sex marriage. You're listening to the Big 550 KTRS. Tony Messenger filling in for McGraw-Millhaven.
All right, it has been a